The galaxy had a way of laughing at things it didn't understand. For centuries, humanity had been that joke. They were the newcomers, fragile, short-lived, emotionally unstable. Their ships were smaller, their weapons less elegant, their diplomacy unpredictable at best. In the grand assembly of civilizations, they were treated like a curious anomaly, amusing, occasionally useful, but never truly respected. Especially not by the Carthuan Dominion. The Dominion had ruled vast sectors of space for over 100,000 years. Their technology blurred the line between physics and myth. Their warships were living constructs of crystalline intelligence. Their soldiers could bend gravity fields with a thought. And yet, on that day, in orbit above the barren world of Kepra 9, the Dominion found themselves staring at something they could not comprehend. A single human ship. It wasn't impressive. It wasn't massive. It wasn't even particularly well-armed, at least not by conventional scans. The vessel drifted in silence, its hull scarred, its energy signature inconsistent. It looked less like a weapon of war and more like something cobbled together in desperation. The Carthuan commander, Virex Thale, observed it from the command chamber of his flagship. "Is this the joke?" he asked, his voice resonating through layers of harmonic translation. One of his officers flickered with bioluminescent confusion. "Commander, the vessel identifies itself as human. It is requesting engagement." "Engagement?" Virex Thale repeated. "With us?" "Yes." A ripple of amusement passed through the chamber. "Perhaps," another officer suggested, "it is a ceremonial duel. Humans are known for strange traditions." Virex Thale leaned forward, his crystalline form refracting the light of nearby stars. "Open a channel." A moment later, the image of a human appeared, grainy, slightly distorted. He was unimpressive. No elaborate armor. No visible augmentations. Just a man in a worn uniform, sitting calmly in a dimly lit cockpit. "This is Commander Elias Vance of the Terran vessel Aegis Null," the human said. "I'm here to stop you." Silence. Then laughter. Not crude, not loud, but a deep, resonant hum that echoed through the Dominion ship. "Stop us." Virex Thale replied. "You are alone. I know. You face a fleet of 87 warships. I know, and yet you remain." Elias Vance nodded once. "I do." The commander studied him carefully. There was no fear. That was unusual. "Tell me, human," Virex Thale said, "what weapon do you possess that gives you such confidence?" For a brief moment, the human hesitated. Then he smiled. "You'll see." The first volley was almost an afterthought. A single Carthuan cruiser fired a precision beam, a weapon capable of slicing moons in half. It lanced through the void, striking the human vessel dead center. The explosion was immediate. Brilliant. Final. The Dominion fleet barely registered it. "Well," one officer said, "that was disappointing." Virex Thale did not respond. Something felt wrong. "Scan the debris," he ordered. The sensors swept through the expanding cloud of fragments. Nothing. No wreckage. No residual energy signature. "No." "Commander," the sensor officer interrupted, "we are detecting a signal." "From where?" A pause. "Behind us." The chamber fell silent. Virex Thale turned slowly. On the far side of the fleet, space rippled. And there it was. The human ship. Completely intact. Exactly as before. "That's impossible," one officer whispered. "Nothing survives a Carthuan beam." Virex Thale's mind raced. "Human vessel," he said, opening the channel again. "Explain." Elias Vance appeared once more, as calm as ever. "Told you," he said. "You'd see." "What are you?" Virex Thale demanded. Human, Elias replied. Just human. Another cruiser fired. This time, the Dominion watched closely. The beam struck. The ship exploded. And then, nothing. For half a second, there was only silence. Then space folded again. The human vessel reappeared. Different position. Same condition. Untouched. Panic, subtle but undeniable, began to creep through the Dominion fleet. Commander, an officer said, "We are observing localized temporal distortions." Define. It appears the human vessel is resetting. Resetting what? Everything. Virex Thale felt something he had not experienced in centuries. Uncertainty. Human, he said again, you will cease this demonstration. Elias shook his head. No. You're going to leave. Or, the human leaned forward slightly. Or, I keep going. The Dominion attacked in full. Dozens of ships unleashed their weapons simultaneously. Beams, singularity charges, gravitic implosions. The human vessel vanished in a cascade of annihilation. And then, it came back. Again. And again. And again. Each time, a different position. Each time, perfectly intact. The Dominion sensors struggled to keep up. It's not teleportation, one officer said. It's not cloaking. It's not phasing. What is it? No one had an answer, except perhaps the human. Inside the Aegis null, Elias Vance exhaled slowly. Loop 97, he muttered. The cockpit flickered. Not physically, but perceptually, like reality itself was stuttering. He glanced at the display. Temporal anchor, stable. Causality engine, active. Iteration count, 97. He closed his eyes for a moment. 97 times. 97 deaths. 97 resets. Most minds would have shattered long before this point. But Elias wasn't most people. All right, he said softly. Let's try something new. Back in the Dominion fleet, Virex Thale made a decision. Deploy the null field. A weapon rarely used. A field that suppressed all known forms of energy manipulation, including exotic physics. If the human ship relied on some unknown energy system, the null field would strip it away. A vast sphere of distortion expanded outward, engulfing the human vessel. For the first time, the ship did not immediately vanish. Direct hit, an officer reported. The Dominion unleashed everything they had. The human vessel was obliterated. Seconds passed. No reappearance. No signal. Nothing. A collective sigh of relief moved through the fleet. It is done, someone said. Virex Thale remained silent. He waited. 5 seconds. 10. 20. Then, Commander, the sensor officer said, voice trembling. We are detecting a signal. Where? A long pause. Everywhere. Space didn't ripple this time. It fractured. Tiny cracks, invisible at first, spread across the fabric of reality itself. And from each crack, a ship emerged. Dozens. Hundreds. Thousands. Identical human vessels, all bearing the same designation. Aegis null. Virex Thale stared in disbelief. This is not possible. On every frequency, the same voice spoke. Elias Vance. You shouldn't have done that. Inside each ship, Elias sat in perfect synchronization. Not copies. Not clones. Iterations. Every loop he had lived, every death, every reset, had been recorded, preserved, and now released. The null field hadn't stopped the system. It had broken the containment. Instead of one looping timeline, there were now thousands, all overlapping, all real. All him. Fire, Virex Thale ordered. The Dominion obeyed. But it didn't matter. destroy one ship, and 10 more took its place. Erase 10 and 100 returned. The battlefield became chaos. Not random, but overwhelming. The humans weren't just surviving. They were learning. Every iteration adapted. Every attack refined. Every mistake corrected in real time across thousands of parallel existences. The Dominion, for the first time in its history, was losing. Elias felt it. All of it. Every version of himself, every experience, every death and victory merging into something greater. It was painful, overwhelming, but necessary. End it, one version of him whispered. No, another replied. Not yet. They'll never stop. They will.
How?
Elias opened his eyes and made a choice. All across the battlefield, the human ships stopped. Simultaneously, the Dominion hesitated. What are they doing? An officer asked. Virex Thale didn't know, but he felt it again. That wrongness. Prepare defensive. He never finished the sentence. Every Aegis null activated its core. The causality engine. Not to reset, not to loop, but to collapse. Thousands of timelines, thousands of iterations, all converging into a single point. A singularity, not of mass, but of possibility. A weapon the galaxy had never imagined. Because it wasn't a weapon. It was consequence. Elias spoke one final time, his voice echoing across every channel. You had a chance to walk away. Then everything exploded. It wasn't a normal explosion. There was no fire, no light, just absence. A wave of absolute correction. Every action the Dominion had taken in that battle, every shot fired, every decision made, was undone, not reversed, erased. As if it had never happened. The fleet vanished, not destroyed. Not displaced, simply gone. When the silence settled, there was only one ship left. Aegis Null. Elias Vance sat alone in the cockpit. The displays were dark. The causality engine was gone. Burned out.
Used.
He exhaled slowly. Iteration complete. There would be no more loops. No more resets. No more second chances. For the first time since the battle began, time moved forward. Weeks later, the galaxy would speak of what happened at Kepra 9. Some called it a miracle. Others called it a weapon beyond comprehension. The Dominion never returned to that sector. And humanity? They were no longer a joke. No longer an anomaly. They were something else. Something the galaxy had learned, too late, not to mock. The silence that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever known. No drifting debris. No radiation scars. No shattered hulls. Just emptiness. Where 87 Dominion warships had once stood, where power, arrogance, and certainty had filled the void, there was now nothing but untouched space, as if the universe itself had decided to forget. Even the stars seemed distant. Watching. Waiting. Inside the Aegis Null, Elias Vance sat motionless. For the first time in what felt like lifetimes, there was no reset. No flicker. No rewind. No second chance waiting just behind the next death. The cockpit lights dimmed, struggling to stay alive as systems failed one by one. Causality engine. Offline. Temporal anchor, destroyed. Iteration count, final. Elias stared at the last line for a long time. Final, he whispered. The word felt heavier than any weapon he had ever carried. The weight of 1,000 lives. Memories flooded him. Not as flashes, but as fully lived experiences stacked on top of one another. He remembered dying. Burning in plasma fire. Being crushed by gravity wells, torn apart at the atomic level. He remembered the fear, then the acceptance, then the numbness. And finally, control. He had turned death into data,
Pain into strategy.
time into a weapon. But now all of it stayed. Every version of himself. Every choice. Every failure. Every victory. All of them lived inside him. And none of them would ever reset again. Elias leaned back in his chair, his breath shaky. Was it worth it? He asked the empty cockpit. There was no system left to answer. Only silence. A galaxy that felt it. Across distant systems, something strange happened. Ships paused mid-flight. Sensors glitched. Artificial intelligences reported anomalies they couldn't explain. Entire civilizations felt a brief, inexplicable shudder, as if reality itself had skipped a heartbeat. Scientists would later call it a causality echo, a ripple caused by too many timelines collapsing into one, a cosmic scar left behind by something the universe was never meant to experience. No one could trace it, but everyone felt it, the Dominion's absence. In the heart of Carthuan space, confusion spread. Entire fleets had vanished from records. Command logs ended mid-sentence. Strategic projections no longer made sense. It wasn't just that the fleet at Kepra 9 was gone. It was that in many records it had never existed at all. Only fragments remained. Corrupted data, broken memories, and a single recurring anomaly. A human ship. Designation: Aegis Null. Status: unknown. Threat level: undefined. For the first time in their ancient history, the Dominion chose caution. Back on Earth. Weeks later, a signal reached human space.
Weak.
Fragmented. Barely holding together. But unmistakably real. When it was decoded, it carried only a few words. This is Commander Elias Vance. Mission complete. No explanation. No data. No proof.
Just a voice.
Tired. Human.
Alive.
The Terran Council didn't celebrate. They didn't fully understand what had happened. But they understood one thing. The Dominion had stopped advancing. Entire sectors once under threat were now quiet. For humanity, that was enough.
For now.
Drifting between stars. Elias didn't return home right away. The Aegis Null barely functioned. Life support flickered. Navigation was unreliable. Weapons, ironically, were completely offline. The most powerful ship ever created was now just a drifting shell. But Elias stayed with it. Because it wasn't just a ship. It was a graveyard. Of every version of himself that had ever existed. He floated near a viewport, staring out into the endless black. For the first time, the stars felt real. Not variables. Not checkpoints. Not things he would see again after dying. Just distant lights in a universe that would move on without him. I remember all of you, he said quietly. Not to the ship, but to himself. To the thousands of selves that had fought, failed, adapted, and endured. You didn't disappear, he whispered. You made this possible. The truth of the weapon. The galaxy would never fully understand what the human weapon had been. Some believed it was a temporal device. Others thought it was a reality-breaking anomaly. A few even claimed it was a myth. But the truth was simpler. And far more terrifying. It wasn't the ship. It wasn't the engine. It wasn't even the loops. It was Elias. A single human mind, forced to experience death, failure, and time itself over and over again, until it learned everything, until it stopped breaking, until it adapted faster than reality could keep up. The galaxy hadn't been defeated by a weapon. It had been outlearned, a final choice. Days later, as emergency systems faded, Elias faced one last decision. There was enough power left for a single transmission, or a single jump, not both. He could send everything, Data, warnings, explanations. Tell humanity what he had done, what the Dominion was capable of, what he had become.
Or
He could go home, say nothing, and let the galaxy believe whatever it wanted. He sat there for a long time,
thinking,
remembering, weighing. Then he smiled, a small, tired, very human smile, and made his choice. The last transmission. Far out in deep space, a faint signal pulsed once and vanished. It contained no technical data, no weapon schematics, no explanation of the causality engine. Just a message.
short,
Simple. Final. Don't build another one. Return. Moments later, the Aegis null jumped. A weak, unstable tear in space swallowed the broken ship and carried it home. Epilogue. The lesson. Years passed. The story of Kepra 9 became legend. Some called it the day the galaxy was rewritten. Others called it the human paradox. But among those who studied the fragments, who analyzed the echoes, who truly tried to understand, a different conclusion emerged. Humans were not the strongest, not the fastest,
not the most advanced.
but they had something the galaxy had underestimated. They didn't need to win the first time, or the second, or the 100th. Give them enough time, and they would learn,
Adapt.
endure, and, if pushed far enough, they wouldn't just survive.